Today on Drawbli, we are drawing
teeth.
Click that subscribe button if you are new around here, and maybe leave a comment below for a suggestion for a future video.
We do like comments. So Ben, you chose the word teeth. Did you already know that you wanted to draw these really cool cartoon animal teeth when you had that idea?
No, I did not. I ended up thinking of that later. So, we've been coming up with some prompt ideas, right? I try to just find, a cool word or something that sounds like it could go a lot of different ways, without coming up with the prompt initially.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to go after the immediate first thing that comes to my mind because I feel like I can, lock myself in a little bit. So I try to leave myself open for more possibilities. I cannot think of the artist who made the illustrations on the left side of the screen off the top of my head, but I might think of it later in the video, and if I do, I'll give him a shout out. But of course, we'll put the name down in the description.
Looks like an old-timey animated Disney movie artist.
Yeah, he made these for a study for Zootopia.
Oh, cool.
He's actually one of the artists I recommend to use as a reference in my course, The Appeal Academy.
Oh, gotcha.
Which makes me feel even more bad that I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But yeah, so tell me about yours.
So this is actually just a warm-up sketch over here that I just included because I felt like it was part of my process. Oh, this is just a warm-up? This isn't even...
Yep,
boom, there it goes.
It's gone. It's gone forever.
I think we're going to do one more warm-up over here. So we don't really need to talk too much about my process on this side, other than I just wanted to... I left this in just because sometimes part of my process is just sketching for a bit, warming up, and I decided, though, to include in these sketches some teeth. But I wanted my actual piece to have some teeth I could go a little more detailed on. So these are just some rough copies of some Loesch heads.
Oh my gosh.
I know, shocker,
what?
Shocker. Where she had the mouths kind of open. So that's what I did there. And that was fun to do. But I didn't really feel like, with her style, everything is very simple shapes and lines. So I didn't feel like I could have really worked on teeth or done justice to the prompt of teeth.
Well, hey, the prompt is meant to, be flexible. So if the prompt is teeth and you draw a character with barely showing any teeth, I mean, hey, that it's whatever. It's completely up to you.
Well, the funny part is my final thing that I decided on, which you can see I'm actually starting now, barely shows any teeth. But as we were talking about, if you're going to draw teeth, you're probably going to draw lips and a mouth around them. And those actually are a little bit maybe more complex and take a little more time.
They can, yeah.
So I definitely spend a lot more time here on the lips than the teeth.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. But I love the direction you went with yours. So tell me, what was the focus of this study for you?
Yeah, so I definitely treated this like a study in a few different ways. So... the main part, or the initial part, being that with each of these, I was just trying to create them from just visually looking at them as best as I could. There are definitely some areas where things got inaccurate, and in that regard, instead of trying to get it pixel perfect, I just kind of went with the flow of whatever shape I ended up creating.
I like that.
So I ended up making 3 of them, and with each one I had a focus on different things. With this one, and I didn't go in with this intention, but they kind of happened. I started to kind of notice these concepts as I got in. So with this one, I kind of focused on something called tangents. Tangents are, oh gosh, who is it Salvador Dali who makes the illusions, the infinite staircase?
No, I just saw the name in a book too. Somebody was the room was a combination of, what's his name? I forget, but we'll remember later. Go on.
Yeah, I can't remember the artist's name, but very famous old artist, and I feel bad for not knowing them as well. Very famous artists. So that artist intentionally uses what are called tangents to create visual illusions of a staircase constantly wrapping around in a loop infinitely, or that room with the stairs on the ceiling and the wall. He loves stairs for some reason, I don't know why. But anyway, tangents are where, at least in this regard, where lines kind of awkwardly line up lines line up, yeah. So, like, for instance, a line that I was just drawing on the side of this hippo mouth kind of came in line with the corner of that tooth almost perfectly. And I was noticing that in a lot of this artist's work on these faces, there actually were a lot of tangents or close to tangents, but somehow it still worked. So what I was intentionally trying to do was find these areas where these tangents were, and anytime that one occurred, I tried to like intentionally break it slightly. So like if you look at the point of that tooth, or the two pointed teeth, see how that point of that tooth kind of comes really close to the end of that tongue?
Yeah, I do.
So if that tongue line were to line up with that tooth, it would kind of make those two shapes almost blend together visually. And because of that, it becomes like visual soup. I don't know, like a blended mixture of, you can't tell what the heck's going on because of tangents. And tangents are something that a lot of new artists unintentionally create. And it was something that I was specifically very much trying to avoid here with this. But yeah, that's what I focused on with this one. I'll talk more about what I focused on with the other two when they come up. But you've made a lot of progress on your lips over there. Tell me more about your lips and your teeth.
So I was...
Because your colors are really cool.
They get a little muddy later on. I end up noodling a lot with the colors. I was following a Cynics. That's the guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had one of his Anatomy Quick Tips videos.
Very nice
on
guy.
mouths.
I spoke to him.
Oh, yeah?
Once, yeah.
Oh, really? What'd you talk about?
We were just talking about a potential project together. But yeah, he's a really cool guy.
That's super cool. Yeah, I love his videos, and his voice in his videos is very calm, very
He's been
nice.
doing YouTube videos for a very long time. He's like one of the grandfathers of art YouTube.
Yeah, so he made it look so easy. So I was just like following along. I think for a while I was at 0.25 speed because he was sped up doing a lot of mouths, demonstrating several concepts. So I just chose one of the mouths to focus on and try to copy a bit because it had teeth showing. He showed me real quick how easy he makes this look. Very shortly on, he was adding in these very like minor details that would add these like very beautiful finished elements to his mouths.
Like
but
very confidently just like slapping it on there real quick. Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried to follow along to the best that I could, but I think for me, I definitely took it past where I felt like I was really learning a lot pretty quickly. And more so just playing around with the colors and changing my pinks here and my pinks there, adding in some blue tones though because he did that. And I like the way that looks where he goes in and adds like a very different color to his skin tones, and it really brings out,
it creates a nice contrast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah.
He was, I heard you listening to one of his videos and asked you to send me the link to the topic of, what was it? Was it iterative?
Oh, yeah, iterative drawing. I loved that video. So it was about an hour long video, which I also took your advice. I watched it at like sped up speed. And it was so fun because he just had this whole video about the value of taking one concept, one thing you're trying to learn to draw, and drawing it just a bunch of times, over and over and over. And I tried that with noses at one point, very simple noses, and I really enjoyed doing it. He said he even suggested doing that from memory and just trying to look at the nose you just drew and trying to modify it so it looks better.
Just modify one thing at a time and kind of not necessarily even make it better, but just experiment and see like how that changes things.
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to it, like I just had one of my sculpting students recently say like, oh, I'm really happy with my progress and this is like my fourth character. And, like, I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. Like, this is only your fourth character that you've ever made. But you got to think, like, when you're looking at all these other artists, like, either me with sculpting or, like, someone like Cynics, they have drawn countless characters. I have sculpted countless faces, countless characters, countless noses. Like, I could make a nose in my sleep if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So it's like, that is the purpose of that iterative drawing, iterative design, to get that mileage and get that experience up. I really liked what he was saying about, what was it? About like not that I believe in like left brain, right brain theory, but this idea of taking something that is a little more analytical and the creative side of it, and having those kind of parts of your brain talk, because you're experimenting and trying different things, but you're being very analytical about how you're like, being iterative with your testing by changing little things, like, oh, it's a little wider now, oh, it's a little longer, things like that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying is a good reminder to be happy with your work along the way, or allow yourself to be happy with what you create on your journey to becoming greater, which all we're documenting here is our journey to becoming good artists. And we're not totally there yet, right? We're not like...
No, we're nowhere near.
Right. But we got to let ourselves be happy with what we create, even though we can see its flaws.
Yeah. Like, if you're not having fun, then, like, in some ways, why are you doing it? Well, I mean, in other ways, though, there's also, like, hey, you're maybe trying to get a job or something, so you have to do some of the not super fun stuff. But, like, if you're not having fun making the art, why are you trying to get a job making art?
Oh, my gosh. I know. Like, what are you trying to move towards?
Yeah. Speaking of tangents earlier... See the tongue in this little mouse mouth at the bottom where it meets those teeth? All those lines intersect in the original illustration. So I intentionally tried to break them up and like get them away from the lining.
So did you have a different focus with this mouth that you were studying? Were you still focused on tangents here?
No, well, they kind of built on top of each other. So yes, I was focusing on tangents, but I was also trying to focus on line weight a lot more, which I didn't do like an amazing job at, but like looking back. But on the bottom of all the shapes, I really tried to emphasize thicker lines to give it like almost a shadowed feeling.
A weight.
Oh yeah, a weight to the shape. So that was something I tried to do. It could have been exaggerated a little more, but I also, if I really wanted to do a good job, I probably needed to like go over with a cleaner brush and recreate a lot of those lines. But line weight is something, lines in general are something that's really interesting to me because it's not something I have personally a lot of experience with. It's very different. It's like going from an instrument where there are strings to an instrument where there are keys. Like I'm making the same notes, but the way I'm making those notes is like through a completely different tool.
Yeah.
So it's like really weird.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So yeah, I tried to focus on line weight, and then in this last one, I tried to focus on shape language.
Shape language.
So I did change this one up quite a bit from the original, just because I was noticing like, oh, there are some really cool blocky shapes, but also some really cool like curvy shapes. So I tried to contrast those.
Oh, okay. So I see some pointy shapes so far.
Yeah, and just kind of roughing it in.
And then there's a curve, yeah.
Ooh, a curve.
A curve and a point.
Yeah, so there's this fundamental in art called contrast. And there are tons of different ways that you can apply contrast. You can do it through shape, you can do it through color, you can do it through size. There's like 10 plus different ways you could apply contrast. But here the way I'm applying it, at least with this initial block-in or sketch, is through like things that are more sharp and things that are more rounded. So that's something I was attempting with this.
How fun. I like that you
drawing.
chose animal mouths or Zootopia style animal mouths to try to learn that from too. That was a good idea. Because then, like we've talked about, it's fun to work on animals because you're not distracted by the wrongness that it ends up looking like when you try human stuff, since we're so familiar with how a human should look. Plus, these are cartoon animals to boot, so really not going to get distracted. You literally can't mess it up, and you didn't. These look great. These are really fun to look at.
I mean, you could mess it up, but luckily, I at least in my mind, I didn't.
No, not at all. These were really fun.
What about you? Did you mess yours up?
Oh, heck yeah.
I don't think so. I think the only thing that feels off to me with yours is that the teeth feel uncentered within the lips.
So
like,
yeah,
very
I called
uncentered.
this Tom Cruise because I saw a meme once that said, look at all these pictures of Tom Cruise. His teeth don't line up right. His like two front teeth.
A lot of people's teeth don't line up right.
He has a tooth right in the middle of his face though.
Does he?
That's what I saw online.
I don't think that's
so
true.
I felt okay putting this tooth right in the middle of the face.
Okay.
Because Tom Cruise apparently has his tooth right in the middle of his smile. So whatever. This is a version of Tom Cruise, maybe some distant relative, distant relative of Tom Cruise.
It's beautiful.
Who has kind of a wonky mouth in many other ways.
So tell me about what you're doing with all these little opacity brush strokes.
Building up color slowly, gently. I decided fairly early on that I wasn't going to worry too much about my base form being a bit wonky. I really wanted to work on values, hues, colors in this. So base form, I was like, whatever. I wanted to learn from Cynics on his, like, it was kind of more of a skin tutorial, really.
Okay.
Is how it felt.
Yeah, I mean,
we were working with skin values.
Yeah, I actually think your skin is not actually bad at all, but I do think that it suffers from a quality that I suffer from in my stuff as well, which is muddiness. And it's muddiness,
This is very muddy.
Muddy brush strokes, which is something I specifically have been able to figure out what causes this. And it's this layering of lots of different brush strokes that end up creating confusion in the surface. Like the term muddiness comes from this, like, it looks convoluted. Like, it's hard to figure out exactly what is going on there. And by using some, like, harder shapes or blending a lot of those together, you can kind of get rid of that effect. And you're doing that right now. You're blending a lot of those out.
Yeah, I did experiment with blending the skin. I backed off of that, though, because I kind of like the strokes on the skin a little bit, but I do go back and try to clean and blend a little bit here, just for a slightly more finished look. Again, at this point, I think I felt like for an hour, I'd kind of learned what I was going to learn for now. But I did try to polish it just a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you're just kind of cleaning up your shapes here?
I guess.
I see you really zooming in.
Yeah.
Getting rid of those lines.
Yeah, might as well. I think originally I created stuff all in the same layers.
Are you using that square brush, Abby? Because that's my brush. That, like...
The flat brush?
I don't actually know what it's called. It's the only brush I use.
One of the main default brushes.
I use exactly one brush, and it is that brush.
I do like that brush a lot. It's very versatile. It has a little bit of texture, so it creates some interest, but it's really, like, dependable and reliable.
I mean, it's pretty much the hard round brush. It's just square instead of being round.
Yeah.
So, when I sculpt, I use a square brush. It's my personal clay brush. So it's got like a square brush stroke, which is why when I started getting more into painting, I was like, I'm going to use a blocky brush here too. Might as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there were any, like, significant takeaways, but it might have just been one of those where you're like, well, I got my hour count up, so that's nice. I mean, you have something cool that you finish with. I think your end piece here looks awesome. I think it's really cool. Thanks. I like your work a lot too.
Aw. What's so cool about, art is such a long journey of, like, successes and failures. But what I love so much about what we're doing here with Drawbli is we're documenting it. And it's so simple for us to go back and look at the progress that we've made and the stuff that we've done previously. We can just so easily scroll back and just look through everything.
Yeah, I really hope that someday, like, if we keep carrying this through, that it could be something encouraging to other people to be able to visually go back and see, the length of time it takes and how it looks.
These idiots can't draw a face, and they've been doing this for years.
I know. Maybe it'll be like, oh, you can really mess up the journey, can't you? But maybe not. Maybe in a year or 2 years we'll be drawing really cool
maybe
stuff.
Maybe in a year, in 10 years.
People will look back and be like, what? They started there? What? And there'll be, like, this big shift where we, like, take a class or something. I don't know.
There are moments of big shifts, but they are kind of few and far between. They don't typically just, like, snap your fingers the next day. Everything's completely different. Not normally. Those things can happen, though. Absolutely.
You learn something, and it just happens to click with where you're at in your journey, and it takes you to a whole new level of ability.
Speaking of a whole new level, you should click that subscribe button to ascend to the whole new Drawbli level.
And leave a comment below so that we can level up with your ideas.
Whoa,
give us an idea of what to draw.
That was so good. Oh my gosh.
Wordsmith.
And this is the part where we say
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. I love your lips, and I love your middle tooth.
Oh, yes, it's a middle tooth indeed. Yeah, that's a pretty big middle tooth.
I feel like it's kind of toothing us off.
Tooth? Oh my god. That's good.